Good evening. Welcome to this candidates forum for the 92nd Assembly District Democratic Primary. My name is Susan Maggiato, and I'm the president of the Rivertowns League of Women Voters. First, I'd like to tell you just a bit about the League of Women Voters. The League was founded in 1920, the year the 19th Amendment was passed, granting women the right to vote. For over 100 years, the League has been a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. This candidates forum is a good example of that effort. As I said, the League is nonpartisan. We do not support or oppose candidates or political parties, but we do work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and we seek to influence public policy through education and advocacy. Membership in the League is open to anyone 16 years of age or older. This forum will be recorded and available for later viewing. There will be links on the Rivertowns League website and Facebook page to the location on YouTube. A word about our recording policy that the candidates have agreed to. Only the entities authorized by the League may record or live stream this forum. Only licensed media, including TV, radio, and newspapers, are entitled by FCC regulations to air portions of the recording. Anyone else who broadcasts or streams the recording must do so in its entirety. This is to ensure that the content of the forum will not be manipulated in any way to create false or misleading impressions of any candidate. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator. Susan Ferris is a resident of Bedford and a member of the League of Women Voters of Northeast Westchester. She moved to New York recently from New Jersey, where she was a longtime League member serving as president for 3 terms. She also spent 35 years as a technology educator. And with that, I will turn the forum over to Susan.
Good evening. My name is Susan Ferris, and I'm going to be your moderator this evening. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a couple of the ground rules to make sure that we're all on the same page. The order of opening statements has been determined by lots that were chosen and picked before this meeting. The order of closing statements will be the reverse order of the opening statements. The order in which candidates will respond to further questions will be rotated by me to assure fairness. Throughout the forum, we will remember that we're here for politics and we're not going to focus on personalities. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute to make an opening statement, and then they will begin answering questions that I'm going to pose. Candidates will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. We have a timekeeper, and the timekeeper will indicate when 30 seconds remain, and then the timekeeper will indicate when it's time to end speaking. Clearly, if you're in the middle of a sentence, you're going to finish your sentence, but the idea is that your time is up. Each candidate will also have an opportunity to make 2 rebuttals to 2 questions during the Q&A. Questions from the audience, as it were submitted prior to this candidates forum night by email and electronic form. The audience will not be able to submit questions during this live event. At the conclusion of the question period, each candidate will give a closing statement of a maximum of 1 minute, and each person, should they choose to, will have an opportunity for rebuttal of 30 seconds. So now we're going to get started. We have 2 candidates tonight for Assembly District 92, and I'm going to start with Mary Jane Shimsky, and I'm going to have her make her opening statement. So go ahead. You need to unmute. Now you're unmuted. Great.
Thanks to the League for hosting this forum. I am Mary Jane Shimsky, a lifelong Democrat, 26-year Westchester resident, and 11-year county legislator with a strong record of achievement. My approach to serving you in government is based on 4 principles. 1, elected officials exist to solve problems for individuals, communities, our state, and our world. Everything else is just words. 2, I follow the facts, science, and evidence wherever they lead, whether it's working with medical and public health experts during COVID and as we prepare for future challenges, or working with mental health experts and social scientists to fight the twin epidemics of hate crimes and gun violence, or with climate scientists and engineers to minimize climate change and ease the effects we are already experiencing in our communities. I follow the evidence. Principle 3, government officials are not soloists. We must work with our colleagues in government, people in other levels of government, and with stakeholders in the community. We can only be effective when we work with others.
Thank you. Okay, and now Tom, and I hope I say your name correctly, it's Avenatti.
Yes, I'm Tom Abenanti. I'm currently a New York State Assemblyman. First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and all of those who are watching and participating. An informed electorate is the safeguard of democracy. Today, we face a full-fledged nationwide assault on democracy, and I'm proud to be part of a New York Assembly leadership team. We're working together, proving to our entire nation that if you have the courage to do what's right, you can make democracy work and you can deliver for everyday people. We've started by reforming the voting system in New York to protect and count every vote. And we've not just defended, but we've promoted a woman's right to choose. We've worked to reinsert justice into the criminal justice system and simultaneously to make everyone safe by getting guns out of unsafe hands and those who misuse them before a judge as soon as possible. And we're working to ease the pain of inflation, subsidizing property taxes and electric bills, cutting income taxes, suspending gas taxes. We've directed more money to education and childcare and road repairs and local projects than ever before. I look forward to the opportunity in this forum tonight to share what I have accomplished, what I'm working on, and what is my agenda for the next 2 years.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so first question, and we're going to start with Tom because there's only 2 people. So we started with Mary Jane, now we move on to Tom. Okay. Question 1, what's your wow factor? What's the reason to believe in you, your mission, and the values that you personify? Tom Abenanti.
To be an effective public official, you have to understand the community. You have to be part of the community. You have to work with people within the community. And you have to know how the system works. You have to develop an expertise. And I have worked my way through the system. I was a president of a civic association. I was a town councilman. I was a county legislator representing Greenberg, and now I'm an assemblyman for the last 12 years. And I have a record that shows that I'm not afraid to stand up, whether it's the governor or the leader of the assembly or anyone else, and do what's right for my community. I have a record that demonstrates that. And I also have a record that demonstrates I know how to use the system to work for the people in our community. Let me give you a couple examples. Just recently, I passed legislation that's going to make it more affordable for seniors in our community. We have seniors who use certain programs that reduce their property taxes. I just raised that level from $29,000 to $50,000. Why? Because seniors are suffering with inflation these days and they need some help. I'm hoping the governor is going to sign that. That legislation passed the Senate, but that's an example of using the system to help people. Now, how did I get that done? I worked with the Speaker of the Assembly. I worked with others from the Assembly and from the Senate, and together we got it done. We delivered for the people of Westchester County.
Thank you. Okay, Mary, do you want me to read the question again? Just
I'm fine.
You're good? Okay,
Yeah.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, I proved in some of the most trying times in Westchester County's recent history that I have the expertise and the persistence to get things done. When I took over as county legislator, our roads, our trailways were a mess. The Ashford Avenue Bridge was on the verge of starting to fall onto the New York State Thruway. I had to work very hard against a Tea Party conservative Republican to try to make sure we got the infrastructure spending we needed to, quite frankly, not only keep our economy going, but to save lives. Those of you who have been around for a while know that it took years of effort using my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, news media of all levels, to finally get that work accomplished. Same thing happened with Sprainbridge Pool. Once County Executive Latimer took office, we've been able to do so much more with our parks. We've passed all kinds of social justice legislation to help working people, to help women and minorities find jobs. We have been working very hard. And my wow factor is I find the big issues of the moment and I work hard. Climate change is huge. Hate crimes and gun violence are huge right now. We've got to do everything we can with them, as with the consequences of climate change, including flooding and our reduced reliability of our electrical grid. I'm
Thank
ready
you.
to go and I'm persistent.
Okay. Next question. We're going to start with Mary Jane Shimsky. What are the most important challenges facing your district, and how do you propose to address them?
Okay. I think that the most important ones are pretty much the same across New York State. As I mentioned, climate change is really important. Gun violence, which is also joined with hate crimes. And for those of you who don't know, we have had a terrible spate of hate crimes in Westchester County and in our district. Swastikas being drawn places, KKK signs being drawn places. What we have to do is we have to find ways to counteract the hate and the poison of mind that come from social media. We also have to make sure we have the right criminal penalties in place, and we have to make sure our educators and all of our civic groups are ready to go to help shield our children from this hate. Now, I think the other thing that's really important on a local level is everybody knows our roads are in awful shape here. We really do have to get to work on that. My opponent's been in office 35 of the last 40 years. He's not been engaged on that issue. He's not been engaged on flooding. I think the final thing I would mention are the public health challenges of the future. Vaccines and proper CDC protocols are needed, and we have to make sure that we are ready to fight the next one better than we fought this one.
Thank you. Okay, what are the most important challenges facing your district, and how do you propose to address them? Tom Avenatti, please.
Okay, first of all, I think people are losing faith in government, and this is a nationwide problem. People are losing faith in democracy, and we have to show that government can work and that democracy can work. And I think we've been doing that. I've been leading the charge on trying to improve the way we vote, to make sure that all of the votes are counted. We just passed the John L. Lewis Voting Act to make sure that democracy reigns in New York. Secondly, I think high taxes. I think people are very concerned about high property taxes, and we've done on the state level whatever we could do. As I said before, we've cut gasoline taxes, we're giving property tax rebates, we're cutting the middle class income tax, and we've subsidized the county, we've given them a sales tax so that they could cut property taxes. So I think tax relief is really important. We've put a lot of money into education because we want education is the key to the future. But we also want to hold down the property taxes that are hurting everyone in our community. And then next, I think the next issue that people really care about is a woman's right to choose. I've been a leader on this. I was the attorney and a board member of the Westchester Coalition for Legal Abortion for many years. And when I went to Albany, I introduced legislation. I've got a constitutional amendment out there that's pending in the legislature. I have an improvement to the already strong laws of the state of New York to protect women who go to healthcare facilities. And I voted to make Roe versus Wade part of the New York state law.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. And yeah, we're going to start with Tom Abenati. Okay, here we go. When faced with a challenging legislative issue, how have you been able to bring people to your point of view? Please give a specific example. How have you been able to bring people to your point of view? And please cite an example.
I have been understanding an issue and understanding the people you're dealing with is the key to working in a legislature. I have been in government for, as my opponent said, 35 of the last 40 years. I've been in the state legislature 12 years, and before that, I was a staff member in the legislature. So I understood my community, and I understood the people in the community. I understood their needs, and I do today, as it's a changing community. But I also understood the people in the legislature. It takes a while to get into a position where you learn the personalities, the needs, the wants of 150 people. I've now moved to the point where I'm in a leadership position, where I'm the chair of a committee on people with disabilities. And just recently, I had a bill that was facing stiff opposition, dealing with developing housing for people with developmental disabilities. I was able to work it until the last day, and I managed to move it through 3 committees and get it passed on the last night in the assembly, because I knew all of the people who were the players in this. I was able to go to them personally. I was able to remove the stumbling blocks, speak with the Speaker's office, indicate the support for this legislation, and move it to conclusion before the end of session.
Great. Okay, thank you. Mary Jane?
Okay, thank you.
Shinsky?
Thank you. I'll provide 2 examples. Number 1, Spring Ridge Pool. The county executive at the time was ideologically opposed to fixing the pool at all and just wanted to let it rot because he felt swimming pools were not a proper function of government. We ended up building coalitions within the Democratic caucus, within the Republican caucus, within the city of Yonkers, as well as some of the other surrounding communities. We worked with the news media, both on the town level and on the county level. It took years of persuasion, but we finally got it done. The second one is the county's clinic access bill, which there's going to be a public hearing on Monday night. We have 14 co-sponsors, which means it should pass. Chairwoman Catherine Borgia and I have worked for over 11 years on that bill during different political party administrations, different views in the county attorney's office, changing laws in our circuit courts and the Supreme Court. And we finally came up with something that, number 1, we know is going to pass, and that number 1 is going to serve a critical and timely need in the face of the new strategy of clinic invasions, which we saw happen up in White Plains in November. I cannot tell you the amount of files, the amount of work, the amount of frustration, but we persisted and we got it, and we are on the verge of getting it done. And it's going to make going to reproductive health services much safer for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Next question, starting with Mary Jane Shinsky. Reflecting on the state budget that was just passed, are there any changes that you would have made to it? Go ahead.
Yes, I think, the one that everyone cites as a problem, and I do tend to agree, is the hundreds of millions of dollars for the Buffalo Bills Stadium up in Buffalo. We managed to get maybe an extra $100 million in for the issue of flooding and stormwater management, not water quality, stormwater management. And I would have loved to have taken some of that Buffalo Bills money and put it toward that. As we know, just in Westchester County alone, we're going to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars over the next several years trying to keep people's houses from going underwater. And that's just Westchester. It doesn't include the rest of the state. We need more priorities with that. And I also think we need to think about how we're funding our roads. $100 million for potholes is nice, but if you pave the roads, you get rid of the potholes too. And there's just been too much that's been let go for too long. I would also add, in terms of the budget, I am very happy to see some of the new investments in childcare and some of the new investments in education, but we're going to have to move forward, especially in some of our local school districts, including Greenburgh Central 7 and Elmsford and Tarrytowns. They are in a position where they have more English language learners and students who qualify for free lunches than are reflected in their formulas, and we have to fix that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Reflecting on the state budget just passed, are there any changes you would have made to it, Tom Abenati?
Yes, if I think putting together a budget is putting together an agenda for the following year. And you have to bring everyone together and give everybody something that they need in their community. Let's remember, we have New York City at one end of the state, but we also have the largest dairy industry in the country. So therefore, the budget is all about compromise. I don't like all of that money going to the Buffalo Stadium, but you have to bring the governor on board so that we could get the money for fixing the roads that we wanted, for people with disabilities. We've gotten more money in this last budget for people with disabilities than we've gotten over the last 10 years. And I'm largely responsible for that because I'm now the chair of the Committee on People with Disabilities. And I made sure that we added money and that we're going to add more money in the future. I would have liked to have seen more education money, but we have fully funded the foundation formula for all of our schools. Greenburgh, for example, gets 110% of the formula. We can go into why Greenburgh is not getting more money, but it has nothing to do with this, with what my colleague just pointed out. It has to do with too many people going out of the school district to private schools. That's something we've got to fix. I just gave Greenburgh $500,000 to fix an auditorium in the Bailey School that has been closed because the roof is leaking, because the floor has asbestos in it, and the chairs are falling apart.
Thank you. Okay, next question. You are on first for this. Okay, New York State finances and supports economic development. Where do you think state money should be spent for these purposes? And what parameters would you put in place as programs are developed and monies awarded?
Economic development in New York State should be focused on producing jobs and on producing those types of industries that we need to be self-sufficient. For example, we just passed a bill which would provide economic development monies for chip makers. This is an industry that is going to be booming in the near future. The previous governor concentrated on yogurt. I was kidding people saying that, the New York now is finally, I'm not kidding people. I was kidding about the governor's emphasis on yogurt in the past, but now we're finally looking at industries that look to the future. So that's an example of where economic development monies should be spent. That's going to bring in thousands and thousands of jobs, and it's going to make New York one of the centers of one of the new industries. Economic development in the past, unfortunately, has been controlled only by the governor, and it has been used as a way for the governor to make friends with people who contribute to his campaign committees. I've tried to get legislation through that would require better ethics filings for the people who are on the economic development teams, and I'm going to persist in doing that. Even though we have a new governor, I think we need more transparency in the economic development throughout the state of New York.
Thank you. Okay, and Mary Jane Shimsky, same question. New York State finances and supports economic development. Where do you think state money should be spent for these purposes? And what parameters would you put in place as programs are developed and monies awarded?
Yes,
There you
I
go.
got it.
You're all set.
Okay. Ever since I worked for Assemblyman Brodsky, Richard Brodsky, who used to hold the seat from 2007 to 2010, part of the emphasis on economic development funds was to create jobs. But the last I saw, and during that whole time, there does not seem to be an enforcement rubric in place to make sure that new jobs are created. It seems as if there's always a way for companies to evade the requirements. And that has to end. We really have to sit down, look at the history, and come up with new requirements and new enforcement mechanisms to make sure that we are actually creating new jobs and not just somehow accounting for other old jobs. In a state as big and diverse as New York, we cannot concentrate on one industry. In fact, we stopped doing that in Westchester County, and that's a very good thing. Chips are good, and yogurt is good, and biomedical engineering is good. All of this is good, and we should be doing all of it. The other thing that helps economies grow is when you have a well-educated workforce that is being paid a fair wage and actually has disposable income to spend. And those kinds of social justice issues, in conjunction with the right targeted economic development spending, will help our state thrive.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Next question, and you're going to be the lead on this one. This is the question. Do you endorse the separation of Edgemont from the town of Greenburgh? Why or why not?
I do not endorse the separation. There's been more heat than light on this issue because trying to figure out the way to bring those two parts of unincorporated Greenburgh, Edgemont, and everyone else into some sort of harmony has been difficult. And I'll tell you, my opponent has been part of the problem. He keeps introducing these bills in the state assembly. They never come anywhere near getting passed, but they create certain false hope amongst certain people that we don't have to talk to the people of Edgemont and we could just do whatever we want because Tom's going to have our back. But to tell you the truth, those bills don't even make it to the state Senate. There's only been one that has ever been a two-house bill. So I don't know why he's doing this. Maybe he can explain why he's doing this, but the majority leader of the New York State Senate has been trying to kickstart a mediation between the residents of Edgemont and the town of Greenburgh. Instead of having two legislators who were completely at cross purposes on this issue and just creating more chaos and more animosity, I would love to have the opportunity to work with the majority leader of the New York State Senate on this issue, get some mediation going, and see what common ground we can find to try to help everyone move forward constructively together. The one-house bills aren't working.
Okay, thank you. Okay, same question. Do you endorse separation of Edgemont from the town of Greenburgh? Why or why not? Tom Abenati.
The village law of the state of New York is antiquated. It's 100 years old. It allows any group of people in any area that have some kind of a commonality, like a school district or a fire district, to file a petition and secede, form their own village, leave a town and leave the rest of the town to work on its own. The village of Edgemont, as they'd like to be called, has been trying to form a formal village for over 50 or 60 years. When they first tried it, the NAACP came out and called it a racist move. That was the headline in the New York Times many years ago. And they've tried over and over and over again. They represent 8% of the population, while they have 25% of the taxes of the town of Greenburgh. Were they to leave, they would destroy the town of Greenburgh. They would take with them resources that the town needs to provide services to the other parts of town, in particular the poorer parts of town. So I have introduced legislation with colleagues in the Senate, colleagues in the Assembly, and other Assembly colleagues who have represented areas that have tried to form villages and have formed them and then collapsed afterwards, leaving huge debts to others. So I've tried to put in some common sense. I want the people of the entire town of Greenburgh to be able to vote, not just the people who live in Edgemont. What you can mediate, I'm not quite sure, but I do know that the people in Edgemont are determined, or some of the people in Edgemont are determined to leave and leave the rest of the town floundering.
Thank you. Okay, next question, and now you go first. Okay, the bigger, better bottle bill and the extended producer responsibility bill regarding packaging did not come up for a vote this session. Will you sign on as a co-sponsor of the updated bottle bill and to the stronger extended producer responsibility bill as proposed by Assemblyman Engelbright and supported by major local environmental groups? Why or why not?
Climate change and environmental pollution are an existential threat to our communities. When I was a county legislator, we were responsible for closing the landfill and renewing the contracts for the Willebreder Fry trash to energy plant in Peekskill. And I got to see firsthand how trash was overwhelming our communities. So I support, as a county legislator, I passed legislation to force recycling in Westchester County. I helped operate the system in Greenberg when we started recycling many years ago. And as an assembly member, I have been a strong proponent of recycling, reuse of materials. I believe I'm a sponsor of the bottle bill. If I'm not, I will sign on to it. That was an oversight. I have also been, I voted for several times different pieces of legislation that require producers to take back products. We just passed the one with respect to rugs, and I know I voted for some legislation with respect to other products. So yes, I support the stronger bottle bill, and yes, I support the producer responsibility.
Thank you. Okay, and Mary Jane Shimsky.
Yes and yes.
Yes.
The large amounts of trash we have to deal with are creating all kinds of havoc in the environment. The toxins that are produced when they're incinerated or otherwise disposed of. The carbon footprint to create new materials all the time. The carbon footprint to truck them from place to place. We are drowning in our garbage and it has to stop. These two bills deal with very large issues that will definitely help. Anyone who has gotten a lipstick in a box this big knows exactly what it's about. But we need to do more. The states of California and Vermont, and it's not just a small state, it's also our largest state, are looking in making mandatory food waste recycling. The county is moving forward with programs helping our local governments with voluntary programs, and we're looking how to increase the size and scope of that program. We really need to do that. We also need to reduce our waste stream through all other kinds of recycling, including textiles. Of course, my opponent mentioned rugs. We've got to go through the whole gamut because we are not going to get under control our environmental issues, including and particularly climate change, if we do not cut down on the waste that we're generating and we have to dispose. And those two bills are great, but we need to do a lot more and cover a lot more areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Next question, and we're going to start out with you. And this is the question. COVID-19 has heightened the awareness of the disparity among citizens in accessing health care. What do you think is the appropriate balance to strike between the states and the federal government with respect to funding healthcare?
I think that some version of Medicare for all on the federal level actually does make a lot of sense, at least as a baseline to middle level of healthcare available to all Americans. But we can't even get background checks in 21 age 21 limits on assault weapons through this current Congress. And who knows what we'll be dealing with in subsequent years. So we are going to have to take on the mantle ourselves in New York State. And I think some of the things that we have to do, we have to look very carefully at the single payer healthcare that has been put before us by Mr. Gottfried for many years. We need to make sure that the math works, but I would definitely be very much interested in supporting that. We also need to look at making sure our neighborhood health centers are properly funded, because healthcare, you can have the financial wherewithal, but if you're working 2 or 3 jobs and you don't have time to take 2 buses to get to the doctor's office, you are still not going to access healthcare. So we need to do more to make healthcare available in individual communities where the people who need it are. We also need to make sure that our public health infrastructure is ready, because it was largely the poor and the excluded workers and the essential workers who suffered and died the most during COVID, and we can't allow that to happen again. We need to get vaccines to everyone as quickly as possible, as well as masks, and make sure that the proper safety practices are followed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we are,
No, I think it's my turn, right?
it is your turn, and I can reread the question, or you can just.
Oh,
go ahead
I
and
think I
answer.
understand the question. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Let me just start off by saying healthcare is a human right. We've got to make sure that everyone in our community gets the healthcare that they need. Our present system isn't working for anyone except the very rich. As the chair of the Committee on People with Disabilities, I see how people with disabilities cannot access healthcare, even those who are on Medicaid and those who are on Medicare. The system is just not working. We've got to look at a better way. I don't disagree with my opponent on the things that she said. The difference between us is I'm already doing all of the things that she's suggesting. I'm a sponsor of the New York Health Act that Mr. Gottfried has proposed. I voted for the New York Health Act several times when it came up for a vote in committee and on the floor of the legislature. So I believe that everyone has to get health care. I voted this year to give free health care to all immigrants, regardless of their immigration status, if they're over the age of 65. So I believe I've taken the actions that prove my beliefs. I'm not just giving words. I'm actually doing all of these things. You know, the problem that we have with the New York Health Act is we've got to deal with the unions and the others who have gotten very good health care by giving up pay to get the benefits. That is a real problem. But this goes back to the ability to work with different people, bring them all together. I am hopeful we're going to be able to pass a version of the New York Health Act very soon, but we've got to bring our union colleagues in before we're going to be able to do that. And we need a governor who's going to be able to do that for us.
Thank you. Okay. All right, next question, and we're going to start off with you. The homeless population is growing. How will you work to help this population? In your opinion, who has failed, and what would be your solution?
Everyone has a right to have a decent place to live. As I said, healthcare is a right, so is housing. We've got to make sure that everyone in our community has a suitable place to live. Dealing with the homeless problem is a very, very complicated issue. First of all, we have to have enough housing. I have voted over the years for a very large increase in the amount of money available to build housing. Secondly, some of the population are people with either mental illness or some other type of disability. And we need to deal with them. We need to help them. We've got to support them. The previous governor was cutting services constantly. Now that I've become chair of the Committee on People with Disabilities, I'm reversing that with respect to people with disabilities. The Assembly is fighting very hard to put money back in the budget for mental health services. We recently funded monies for the counties to do crisis intervention. We're also trying to get more mental health care workers on the street trying to get beds. Now let's jump to another part of the homeless population. These are people who are just not making enough money to make it in our communities. We've got to raise the minimum wage in places where it's too low. We've got to make sure, we've got to enforce the laws to make sure that people are not being taken advantage of. We have people working at 2 and 3 jobs and still can't pay the rents that they need to pay. So it's a very complicated issue. I think we need to have a better look at this from perhaps a task force, but it's got to be led by the governor. I've been working along with the leaders of the assembly to try to solve the problem, but I think it needs more effort.
Thank you. Okay, and now we're moving on to Mary Jane Shimsky. Go ahead.
We definitely have different layers and different levels of problems. With respect to people who need community mental health services, it was Westchester County's government who led the way in getting our crisis response teams back after the Republicans got rid of those programs. We need all kinds of wraparound social services because generally people who are very troubled don't just have one problem. They have a multitude of problems, and you need to make sure they're all addressed because just addressing 1 or 2 is not going to solve the problem. But there's a more fundamental problem here. And anyone who has adult children who live in the New York metropolitan area have seen it. People simply, even people who are making what look like good middle-class salaries can't afford a decent apartment, much less a single family house in Westchester County. Easily 2/3 of Westchester County has a hard time paying for their housing every month. And there are going to have to be many ways we deal with that. There have been historic investments in affordable housing and housing that is affordable, but we're going to need a lot more. The other thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to move to good cause eviction because there are unscrupulous landlords that are churning their properties to keep the rents going higher and higher. And ultimately, we are headed toward what Los Angeles, California is. And the only problem is you can sleep outside in the winter in Los Angeles. You cannot sleep outside in the winter in New York.
Thank you.
Can I exercise the right for a rebuttal here?
Absolutely. So
Thank you. Very
Go
briefly.
ahead.
My opponent just said that she's in favor of good cause eviction. I voted for 2 moratorium and did not vote for the 3rd one for the same reason I'm not in favor of good cause eviction. We need to understand that in our district, we have a lot of 1, 2, 3 family homeowners who would be destroyed if we had good cause eviction, just like they would have been destroyed or they were being destroyed by that third moratorium. You know, when my opponent has said over and over.
That's it. 30 seconds. Thank you.
I
Okay.
think I'm going to exercise one of my 30-second
Yeah.
rebuttals, if that's permissible. under-
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nancy.
I just need like a hand up. You get 2 and this is your 1. Yeah, sure.
This is my first one.
Yep.
Mom and pop landlords are not the ones churning their properties. It's speculators. And with that, with the eviction moratorium, he voted against keeping it on when the state had $2 billion in aid to give to landlords and tenants so they could settle their differences without going to court. The only people who were going to win under that scenario that he voted for would be the landlord's lawyers.
Okay. All right, next question, and we're going to start with Mary Jane Shimsky. And this is the question. The COVID-19 crisis has exposed the inadequacy of affordable childcare. How would you make childcare more accessible and affordable to all working parents? Mary Jane Shimsky, please, first.
Okay, thank you. This is a problem that we've been working on at the county for many years. And this year, due in part because of the COVID funding we've gotten from the federal government, we have actually made historic investments in childcare on the county level. More and more families are able to get assistance. But this is one of those huge social issues that counties can only do so much, which is why I want to go to the state legislature. we need to do more on the state level. Thank goodness this year, and I think part of it's probably because we have a female governor. We actually have had historic investments on childcare at the state level. But I would suggest to you that as the system absorbs that money and we get more and more children in, we are going to need to consider increasing that investment year over year for a number of years to make sure that all of the children who qualify for that childcare can actually get it. Because childcare not only enables parents to work, therefore increasing the financial wherewithal of the family, it also is a good way to give the children a good educational start before they go to school. And it's a lot safer than some of the alternative care that people end up using because they can't afford anything else. They can't afford good alternatives. So it is critical that the state continue increasing their involvement and their investment in this area.
Thank you. Okay. And so moving on to Tom Abenati, same question. COVID-19 crisis has exposed the inadequacy of affordable childcare. How would you make childcare more accessible and affordable to all working parents?
Well, I agree with everything that Mary Jane has said so far, except we're already doing it. We doubled the amount of money available for childcare, but I do disagree with her in one area. I think the county can do more. When I was a county legislator, we were actually subsidizing childcare in the county to make sure that there was a living wage paid to those who are providing childcare. You know that, and that brings me back to some of the other things. My opponent keeps talking about how she couldn't get things done when Rob Astorino was the county executive. Well, I was there when Rob Astorino was the county executive, and I got $1 million for Dobbs Ferry through Rob Astorino. I also drafted the stormwater management plan that the county of Westchester has while I was a county legislator, and we passed it. And it has not been put into effect by the county since then. And I think that's the fault of the Board of Legislators. That's why there is no actual plan by the county of Westchester to spend the $4 billion that we have in a bond act coming up. Will be there for flooding to deal with flooding. In addition, when I was there, I drafted a clinic access bill that the Board of Legislators then passed and Astorino vetoed, but the Board of Legislators hasn't done anything on that for 10 years. Also, when we're dealing with crisis response teams, there were crisis response teams when I was a county legislator. Now, I'm not quite sure if you want to compare records. I mean, when I was a county legislator, I got things done individually, and as a New York State Assemblyman, I've been getting things done. I've been delivering for people in my district.
Thank you. Okay.
You know
Next
what?
question.
I'll take my chances and take my second rebuttal now.
Take your second rebuttal now. Okay, go ahead.
We have gotten over $90 million in investment in this area, my legislative district plus Spring Ridge Pool, which is just over the border. Much of it from Rob Astorino, and all of it on things that my opponent neglected while he was a county legislator. We had reasons why we couldn't do the clinic access, but we're finally getting it done. His bill is still sitting there in Albany. And we have gotten historic investments in childcare, which are higher than anything that he had gotten. Now, in terms of stormwater management,
That's the
I'm
end
sure
of the
we'll
rebuttal.
get to that later.
Okay.
So that's fine.
Okay. Okay. Next question, and we're going to start. The answer is going to be Tom Abenati. Okay.
Abinanti, there you go.
Okay, I got it. Okay.
You can call me Tom,
okay.
Susan. You don't have to use the last name.
All right. Here's a good. Okay. Question. This is question 11, just for your information. Have all the necessary steps been taken on bail reform? If yes, please explain. If no, please explain what else is needed. Go ahead.
I have we need to restore justice to the criminal justice system. I was very pleased to be able to vote for bail reform 2 years ago. And then just this year, we needed to make some corrections to it to make sure that those who misuse guns, criminals who have illegal guns, go before a judge as soon as possible. We have still not totally fixed the criminal justice system. We have too many people being arrested for broken windows types of crimes. We have too many people who are remaining in jail for crimes that really should not be warranting a jail sentence. And we need to provide more lawyers to make sure that the system is fair. We have started to pay for attorneys on the state level, and we need to continue that. I think we have to have a balance. We need to make sure that we keep people safe. We've passed over the last week, we passed 10 bills to try to deal with gun violence. And before that, we passed several other bills, one of which was mine that the governor signed dealing with undetectable guns. So we've been working on the one hand to try to make sure that the criminal justice system is fair, and on the other hand, that people in the state of New York are safe.
Thank you. Okay, and now Mary Jane Shimsky. Bail reform. You're
Muted.
there you go. You're on.
One of the issues that you have with something like bail, whether someone should be on release or not, is predicting future dangerousness. And that is obviously not an exact science. And I am very happy that the legislature did pass the comprehensive bail reform package, because too many people were being locked up for reasons that didn't have anything to do with the public safety or with their flight risk. And we have to be careful, because if we give judges too much discretion, sometimes extraneous factors, including racism and bias against people of limited means, do start creeping into the calculus. At the same time, the original bill did need some adjusting. And as Tom discussed, there were changes that were made this year. And I think that those will make the bill a better bill. They will protect the public safety. And at the same time, we're avoiding giving the kind of discretion to judges that is sometimes misused and ends up ruining lives and families.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question. And this time we're going to start out with you. And the question is this, and we touched on this a little bit, but okay, so this is like the whole topic in one question. Finding affordable housing in AD 92 is a serious problem, which is exacerbated by the current housing boom. How would you address this issue in the Assembly? What ideas do you have to create more affordable housing and to protect both renters and landlords? Go ahead.
Well, I think first of all, we have to eliminate the incentive to churn properties, which means we do need good cause eviction. I think we do need to provide incentives, economic and otherwise, for local governments so they can work with their property owners and find ways to increase the housing stock. At the beginning of this budget season, there were proposals to impose certain rules on all municipalities. That was beaten back, but I think that there's still a lot of room where municipalities do want to do something to help their residents and the people who want to become residents. And I think we do need a task force to talk about ways that the state can help the local governments help their local property owners to become landlords and to provide more housing stock. At the same time, we do need more investment in traditional affordable housing, the income level for which is still fairly high in Westchester. Because if you want affordable housing and you qualify, there's still nowhere near enough for all the people who need it. So we need to do all of that too. But I think we can move forward on a lot of this because people really are seeing the need more and more. The
Okay,
political
thank you.
moments here.
Okay. Okay, and Tom, same
Okay, as I
question.
said before, I think that housing is a human right. I think the way to get affordable housing is to provide state subsidies with certain clawbacks. We have to make sure that the housing remains affordable. The Mitchell-Lama projects of the past are something that we're looking at in Albany right now and talking about doing. Mitchell-Lama was named after a senator and an assembly member, and that's what Co-op City was. And it was a way for people to buy into a project very inexpensively. They could live there for a while, watch their nest egg grow, and then leave, but the project remains affordable. I think we have to look at that for those communities that want it. I think we have to expand on the Section 8 program, which provides vouchers to tenants so that they can afford to live in the communities where they want to live. My opponent keeps talking about good cause eviction. What good cause eviction is it restricts landlords from evicting tenants. So that means if a little old lady who owns an apartment, a two family apartment, she cannot force the tenant out if it is a bad tenant or someone who doesn't fit her style or doesn't want to pay the rent that she wants. What we've seen statewide is that where there is good cause eviction in upstate and some of the cities, the investors are coming in, sweeping in and buying properties at a very big discount price, which then gentrifies the neighborhood and defeats the whole purpose of trying to get more affordable housing.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, next question. And we're going to start with you. Okay. New York has been in the forefront of providing support for people with disabilities. How would you continue this work and what more needs to be done?
Okay, I'm the chair of a new committee in the Assembly on people with disabilities. Before I became chair, people with disabilities were seen as somebody who was in the way, an inconvenient group of citizens. I have made people with disabilities a priority in the state of New York. For the first time in 10 years, we have had a budget that actually wasn't cutting, it was actually increasing. I just passed legislation which would encourage family members to come up with innovative housing approaches because there is a dramatic shortage of housing for people with disabilities in the state of New York. We also need to encourage employers to hire people with disabilities. I held a hearing, a 10-hour hearing. We brought in dozens of witnesses to talk about how do we fashion a program to get people with disabilities into the job market. And we passed some bills this last session that came out of that hearing. We need to have more workers in the field to support people with disabilities. And I've made several proposals to the governor's office. I know that they're working on some of the proposals that I have made. People with disabilities deserve the same opportunity as everyone else to go to school, to live in the community. I've passed bills 3 years in a row to waive the 21-year age limit on providing education for kids with disabilities who were not getting all of the services they were supposed to get because of the pandemic. So we've got a good start, and I am intending to continue pushing for people with disabilities. I've become a spokesman for them where they didn't have a spokesperson before.
Okay, thank you. And Mary Jane Shimsky, forefront of providing support for people with disabilities. How would you continue that work and what more needs to be done?
Of course, Tom is to be saluted for much of his groundbreaking work on this subject. What people in the community have to know and what political entities have to know is the value that people with disabilities bring to the community. They are doing many of the essential jobs that in a labor shortage, we cannot find people to fill. They also have, in many cases, extraordinary talents and gifts. We need to make sure that just like everyone else, every single person with disabilities can actually get the resources and the education they need to fulfill their destiny and their true potential in life. People with disabilities also have more vulnerabilities because their resources and their options are often limited. Housing is a huge problem for the average person in Westchester County. It's even worse for people with disabilities. The bureaucratic rules that my opponent cited are just part of the problem. We need to do more to make sure that innovative ideas for housing are allowed, that people are not warehoused with their parents and then warehoused in a random room somewhere when their parents died. That is not okay. We've got to do better on the housing. We've got to do better on the education, and we will be rewarded for a sector of the community that will really be a contributing segment of our society. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. All right. This is the last question before closing statements. And we're going to start with you, Mary Jane. And this is the question. Describe one recent bill that you were the prime sponsor of that became law and why it was important. That's the question.
Okay. Most of what I do is infrastructure, which means that I am essentially the prime mover of all of the bond acts. In my 6 years chairing the infrastructure public works committees, we've probably passed close to $2 billion of bonds. Now, I've got a bill that we know is nearing passage. That is the clinic access bill, which has previously been discussed. I think it's really important that we do a wide range of items. And sometimes the answer is not a new public law, although as leader, as majority leader, and then as majority whip, I have had a role in all of the major social legislation that has passed through. But what we really need to do is take a holistic view. It's not who scores the most points wins. It's who makes the biggest impacts on the lives of the people in this county. And in terms of getting our infrastructure fixed, in terms of moving into new areas on climate science, I have been leading on all of this. I have been working as an advocate with the county executive's office, with the executive branch of government, to make sure that all of our social justice ideas on our floor have been implemented. This is what we need to do. We need to make sure everything works. And that's not necessarily done by passing 27 laws or 127 laws.
Okay. And Tom.
Yes, one of the most important parts of being an assembly member is working in your community, identifying what the problems are, and then producing legislative fixes. Over the last 12 years that I have been an assembly member, I've passed 150 bills. I passed 27 bills in this last session. One of them that I want to highlight is a food scraps bill, which came from the Greenburgh Town Board. They said that supermarkets are throwing away good food. So we passed a law in the state of New York that requires supermarkets to set aside food that is going to be disposed of, but still good, and set aside and form contracts with food banks so that the food banks could come and pick up that food, and then that could be distributed to people in our community. You know, I was a county legislator for many years. I passed legislation. I set up the Solid Waste Commission. I changed Westchester gun laws twice. I took on the NRA both times and beat them both times. I changed environmental laws. I got monies for our communities. I saved 400 acres of parkland in the town of Greenburgh. I was responsible for making sure that we were able to complete the South County Trailway and the Riverwalk. When I was the county legislator, I accomplished a lot. I ask you to compare my record with that of my opponent. I showed when I was a county legislator, I was ready to be a New York State Assemblyman because I understood the needs of our community and how to use the legislature to make things better. And when I got to the Assembly, my record proves that the people who elected me were correct, that I was able to use the Assembly and the legislature in general to help the people of our district.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are done with our questions and we're going to move to closing statements. I believe that Mary Jane Shimsky went first for opening statements. So for closing statements, it's reverse. So you are now going to give your closing statement first, please.
Okay, let me first of all thank the League of Women Voters again and all of those who are watching. Look, our agenda is to protect and count every vote. Our agenda is to ensure a woman's right to choose, to restore justice to the criminal justice system, and simultaneously make everyone safe, to get the guns out of unsafe hands and those who misuse them before a judge as soon as possible, to help New Yorkers come out of the pandemic and help ease the pain of inflation, to give better educational opportunities to everyone, to put in place effective tools to combat climate change, to give people with disabilities a real opportunity to be part of our community. If we have the courage to do what's right together, we can do it. I care about our community. I want to continue to work with my colleagues in Albany, our county executive, our board of legislators, our local mayors and boards, and with all of you who are out there to make our community a better place to live. So I thank you, and I ask for your vote.
Thanks. Okay, and Mary Jane Shimsky, your closing statement. You need to toggle your switch, please. There you go.
Thanks again to the league and thanks to everyone watching at home. Westchester County government has come a long way in the 11 years since I joined it. We have done a great deal to fix everything that was broken. We have a whole raft of social justice and environmental legislation. That was only done through collaborative effort. Some of that even includes things like fixing flood problems. We have flood management money going into Greenberg, into Yonkers, into Dobbs Ferry, and many other communities within the county. My opponent keeps talking about there's no plan. Actually, there is a plan, but more importantly, we're taking action to fix problems and help people live better lives. That's what we've been doing. We don't look to take credit. We don't look to shift blame. We just look to get things done. And there is so much that needs to get done on the state level, everything from climate change, regulating Con Ed, flooding, hate crimes, gun violence, and women's right to we need better clinic access legislation, which my opponent hasn't been able to deliver either. Let's get things done in Albany. Let's make a change.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you to both the candidates. And I want to remind you that this has been recorded and will be available on the Rivertowns League website, which is lwv-rivertowns.org. I also want to remind everyone of the unique and important role that the League of Women Voters here in this community and across this country plays to work to register voters, educate voters, and protect everyone's right to vote, which is vital to the strength of our democracy. Democracy is not, as you've probably seen on little bumper stickers, a spectator sport. It requires an active, engaged voter. The election that we are dealing with here for this candidate forum is the primary election, and the voting day for that is June 28th. Early voting starts on June 18th. So that would be the time to start thinking about getting to the polls. And that's it. Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.